Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting of February 15th, 2024, our 20th meeting of fiscal 2024. We're here at Memorial Hall and Town Hall. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location in the agenda, which is here at Town Hall, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link in the posted agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or via Westborough TV's online platform at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their help. Okay. Looks like we got it. Enough here. I don't see anyone here for public comment, so we will continue our efforts on annual town meeting. I am going to start with some information from my conversation with town manager Christy Williams on some of the questions we sort of kicked about at I think it was at our last meeting, it may have been the meeting before. One area was on the ambulance reserve. We were wondering how it's done and how it's set up. The way it works is the chief makes the request and it is approved by the town manager for how much of the ambulance funds they'll put into the reserve each year. Historically, she believed that we always still needed some free cash to buy the ambulance, particularly lately. The chief has requested an increase due to the cost increase in the ambulance this year, but she believes there still may be some need for free cash involved in the future as well. And of course, moving more to the ambulance reserve does reduce the revenue side of the equation, so has impact on the actual tax rate set. So you kind of want to balance because you're creating, in essence, another savings account besides the free cash, whereas the free cash has a little more flexibility, I guess. So that's sort of the answer to that. And I will tell you that with all these answers, Christy is planning on attending one of our meetings in, not next week, the week after. So we'll be able to get a more perfect version of the same questions if you still have questions. Tuition reimbursement. Years ago, this was in the town manager's budget as a line item. We were talking about the article now. And they had to do an estimate for the following year by taking a poll from everybody. So you can picture this in September, asking people what classes are they planning on taking over a year from then, or starting a year from then and in the following spring. And she said, in general, you got a list because people thought they would take classes, but they usually, in general, did not take as many as were people thought they would, and it is a required payment for when it is done. And of course, that's in that budget, so that is a raise and appropriate. So they moved to make it an article because you could put in some amount and then replenish it more if you didn't use it or use it for the following year. The article is normally a raise and appropriate article, though, but I guess this year they're doing it out of free cash, or that article is out of free cash. So that's why that moved. Rod had questions at the end on the water, sewer, stormwater funds, and once she told me the answer, I do recall this answer because we covered it last year when we talked about those things. The town pays for water and sewer, but it's paid through the indirect costs payback. So in other words, when the town finance director or accountant works on the water enterprise and sewer enterprise, there's a certain amount of bill back that gets billed in other groups. So to most extent, this covers the expense for water and sewer. For stormwater, because you were asking whether we should be budgeting, it's currently anticipated that the services are actually more the amount the town will owe for stormwater fees from its number of buildings. And so there was no need at this time to budget more. In fact, it may be in the other direction, if anything.
I don't know if I understood what services.
Accounting, mostly, billing.
Oh,
So
basically they're washing
there's indirect
charges
costs.
against it.
Right, so you have to, like, to have the water and sewer bills done, the accounting office here, somebody has to spend, I don't know, what is it, 2 hours, let's say 2 of their 40 hours a week. So they're allocated to that. So those are so-called indirect charges. So when you see in these funds, like the water fund where it says indirect fees, those are things for administering
So that's
the finance.
so the indirect total is the difference between what they bill versus what they,
Operational cost.
so
Yeah, so in other words, some of that money has to come out of the water or sewer enterprise or the stormwater enterprise. So that would show up in their budget.
so the indirect cost
Yeah.
is lower. We see a lower cost because some of it's using to offset the
Yes.
fees they would have paid.
Yes. And I remember us, once she explained it again, I go, oh yeah, that's right, Leah explained sort of these costs, they bill out of there. Just sort of like when they have those articles where 10% of it goes to water, 10% to sewer, and the rest to DPW. The accounting, and I don't know what other groups are, it might be central purchasing, it might be HR or other things that are needed to support that. But so that's why there's not all these budget lines of paying for each water and sewer, but they do pay for the amount they use.
So what, not to be difficult, but what does the school board do?
I would bet it's in the school budget for water and
I don't
sewer.
think so.
Well,
Yeah.
Is it? I can look.
Yeah,
Beth was raising her hand too.
unless somehow their water and sewer is done through the town. I don't know,
Yeah.
but we can ask when they're here. Beth, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just similar that you're going through some of the changes. Jen Sullivan said that they're going to withdraw the hazardous waste portion of the article because they're going to apply for grants this year.
Oh, okay.
It hasn't happened yet, but that was what I got told. And the car is still going through the DPW's
10E,
article.
10E.
Okay, so you're saying, yeah,
Hazardous
hazardous waste day is likely to disappear from the warrant,
Article 10, Part E,
or be
is
passed
likely to
over.
disappear.
Okay. Good to know. I should write somewhere that down. Okay, may go away. Very good. In terms of the other area, was the free cash number, where did the 450K come from, et cetera, et cetera? Its original derivation came from COVID, when we started with, I think, $1 million of free cash to help offset, and then that was reduced during the time leading up to the budget by the amount that they were saving on other things that were coming down. And at some point, there was a strange number that was just slightly north of 450, probably 3 years ago or something like that. And they ended up rounding it down to 450. In theory, we should be reducing it each year now, but they've kept it at the same number each year for now. And she believes that ideally we don't use it for expenses. We use, because it creates this structural deficit that we're in actually right now, even with it. But it could be considered for things like reducing debt or other, you could reduce more debt sooner maybe and not pay as much. They mentioned at the select board meeting that we're going out for our borrow, and we'll know in sort of about first week of March, and that can actually, that has the chance of coming in at a lower number than we have in the budget right now for what we will have to pay on that, because they were conservative. And per the information they're getting, that can reduce next year's tax burden because the payment would be lower. But she doesn't want to count on that till it happens in early March, which would still be be before town meeting anyway. That would be known. So there isn't some line in the magic budget that we get to vote on or whatever. It's really on the other side of the equation of how you're going to pay for it, not fake revenue, I guess you could call it. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay. Other things I want to cover. I wanted to. So I guess I have a question for the group, because at some point we're going to have to vote on the budget, and I think a couple lines have changed. I saw minorly, so I'm not sure. We'd vote lines tonight, but I have a two-pronged question for people. A, are there departments in the budget that you will want to have separated out because you would like them voted separately? For example, we vote on DPW salary and wages separately because Jane has to not vote on that one. But other people might want a chance to vote no on a certain one versus the other. And the alternative to also voting no is someone might want to make a motion to change one of those numbers and see if everybody wants to go along with a lower number or a different number or a higher number. So I'm kind of trying to collect whether people have specific ones in mind that they're interested in doing either, so that we can start sort of strategizing how we're going to vote those. In general, in the past, we sort of do what the John Arnold town meeting method of going through them all, reading them out, and if there are questions, put those ones aside and vote the rest. But this is more of a doodle poll to get the idea of how much time, the more of them that all want to be deep dove and discussed as individual things, the longer that this will obviously take. So I need that as part of planning.
So I don't know that I would call it a deep dive. I'm ready to vote on all of them as a block, with the exception, and you guys might have the answer for this. I suspect we went over it at the budget summit, but I don't remember. I couldn't find a note on it. I didn't have time to go through the budget summit replay, but the Board of Selectmen town manager salaries and wages elected.
Yes. So
That was not in the budget previously, I presume,
Oh, so
and now it is, and I don't
well, it's
remember
coming back
why.
out, honestly, because they just voted to take the. So as a select board
Okay.
member, you get a stipend.
No, I knew that. Yeah.
$500.
Yep.
That's them. So that's
Right.
2,500. 5 times 500.
Yep.
The town manager had put it back in the budget, just thinking that, well, it's not her place to really keep it out necessarily. It's the select board to decide that they are willing to not take a stipend. And she thinks with all the meetings to go through, et cetera, everything they're doing, all those hours and other stuff,
Yep.
I mean, it's clearly a
Yep.
well-deserved thing. I did happen to catch the part of the select board meeting where when they were going through the budget changes, they voted to remove that. So actually that line will become 0 again.
Okay, thank you.
And I will
Yeah.
say, Mr. Arnold's budget has been zeroed out for a number of years now. because
Yes.
He also,
And that, I remember the discussion around that.
okay. So that's the
Right, although
answer to that.
nobody's ever signed, I just want to say out loud, nobody has signed up for Mr. Arnold's internship, and somehow we should be promoting that, given that the money exists.
That wasn't me. I didn't do
Oh.
the internship, that was Syed.
Oh,
I
okay.
think Said did that years ago,
Yeah, okay, so then maybe that's gone away then.
quite possible. So yeah, that number, Board of Selectmen elected
Elected.
is going back,
To 0.
the town manager's recommendation now would be 0, and I guess so would ours. The other big news,
Wait,
and we will be getting
Our salary
all,
includes
what?
our paid person who takes notes.
Laura?
Yeah, she gets paid.
She's not in the Board of Selectmen office.
No, but you said ours would be going to 0.
No, our
No,
recommendation.
Our recommendation on the.
Oh, sorry,
On the
fine.
Board of Selectmen salary and wage line.
Elected.
Okay, sorry.
Elected would be going to 0, to be clear.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and I am going to be getting this information and we'll be sending it out, but she has done some updates as well. And the largest update to the overall budget right now is the state aid is 100 and something, I forget if it was 115 or 150, but K less than we had in the budget as the expectation, came in lower. So that's got an effect in the wrong direction, obviously. The other items were smaller that they showed on the screen, but I don't have those yet. But I've asked her to provide us with updated budget, the latest greatest budget table and the latest greatest, what we'd call the budget sheet.
Cherry sheet?
Which, that's not really a cherry sheet, it's our version of that, which shows what we expect for revenue and what we expect for expenses total one.
Does the budget cut also impact the schools then? From the
I
state?
don't know if that chapter aid got reduced. I know, I think this was the one that goes to the town side. So,
Okay,
I'm not sure, would be the answer.
okay.
Okay, back to our subject of budgets.
So I can tell you what I'm thinking, and I don't know how it affects your question.
Okay.
You know, the fact that the average family taxes will go up $1,000 a year, I think is burdensome.
Mhm.
And I think we need to think of a more austere budget. And I'd be questioning any additional positions. Not that I would vote against all of them, but I would certainly want to have a discussion about them. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the school board, I believe, held their expenses the same from last year. I think in terms of the individual schools and their different budgets.
They're up 5-point-something%
But
because
that's
salary increase. They did not add any people.
Right, but I mean, in
I-
terms
so
of
I don't-
expenses, not salary.
Ah,
Each of the schools, I think, kept their expenses the same as they did the previous year. And I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be my thought at this point, that the individual departments, with the exception of things like insurance and electricity and things that we have no control over, we would look to hold the expenses similar to last year in order to lower the overall budget for this year.
okay.
So I don't know how that affects your question, but that would be.
Well, I think it answers the question in one respect, is that you would like to have probably a discussion on every one of these, say, before we voted, and then maybe we could block them, but we would want to go through them, so maybe we'll start some of that. Anybody else?
Yeah, my thinking is along a similar line to Rod's, and I think maybe it's a question that begins with the town manager, and that is, as the town meeting, or as the budget summit began, is something we've talked about before. She said, assuming a level service. So I guess the question would be, if it's not a level service delivery for the town, what does that change and where does it change it? And I don't think it affects everybody the same way. Like, is it 5% less health, the same thing as 5% less DPW, is the same thing as 5% less chiefs, police? I don't know.
I don't understand your question.
The town manager said that the budget is based upon level service delivery.
And
So-
then plus the ad she pointed out, yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
But I guess if the assumption that it's not a level service delivery comes off the table, what are those areas we should consider looking at as to where there is something that we could talk more deeply about? And that's a sweeping question, but I
Yeah,
guess I don't
because-
know where to begin, which is why I'd start.
You
by
would
asking
have
the
to
town manager.
decide what services you wanted less of.
Fair enough, but I suppose I would look for her insight as to where some of those areas of focus could be.
Yep.
Okay.
And
I
I
mean,
guess
her recommendation is.
her recommendation is
to-
based upon
Budget.
level service.
Level service, yeah.
Like, and if we didn't do level service, and,
Okay.
and it's getting
I mean, I
very
can
much in the
ask
same
her.
line as,
Sure.
as Rod's statement, which is, this is $1,000 seems crazy at this point, with no suggestions as to what could be pulled back on that. And I know they've been incredibly thoughtful about how they're careful about how we're walking up that 1,000, but how do we not walk up that 1,000 necessarily? Which will likely be less as budgets, things settle and we've
Yes,
been
although,
conservative.
I mean, you do have to keep in mind, because you're saying town manager, half of that increase comes from the schools.
Mhm.
So it's not, it's also a fair question, I guess, for the school superintendent.
Sure,
Then.
although we have much less input and insight into that. I mean,
Obvious.
I'm just trying to be practical about what
Yeah.
it is that's in our purview to control,
Okay,
so.
I can ask her to speak to that.
So just to add to both of them, right? I just had a few points. I guess one of them I just am trying to understand, right? When we say level budget, would that also mean, or could that also mean, if you keep the same wages and salary, or that would mean that
You can't do that
you
because
can't
those
do
are negotiated.
those are negotiations?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Right.
can eliminate positions, but you can't not.
Increase the wages and salaries.
Right, those are negotiated typically in 3-year chunks.
Okay. Okay.
So level service only means you have the same number of people, and in theory, they're getting cost of living increases, and if they're still qualified for steps, like, because either you have a new degree or you've been there only so many years, you go up some chunk depending on which group you're in.
Because the reason I'll give you the context of why I'm saying this is because when I was looking at the wages and salaries across every one of them, and compare it versus what it was in 23 to 24 versus 24 and 25, not just, I know on the budget it just says 24 and 25, but if you look at comparison of 23 to 24 and then 24, 25, and then increase directly from 23 to 25, because we are in 23 and moving to 25 and talking about 25, you would see like double digits of, and more than in fact double digits in 23, 24, and similar double digits in 24, 25 as well. So I'm not quite sure, and I have those numbers, I can share those numbers as well, but I don't know if we should be looking at that as well, like what is causing those wages and salaries
Well,
to
that's
be.
somewhat obvious, isn't it? Have you been at a grocery store? I mean,
Yeah.
so some of that is you go to the table and you negotiate deals every so many years.
Sure.
So are you in the first year of it, the second year, or third? And you may have made, I remember one year, I think this is the year that the schools are finally paying the big number, because they had lower numbers in the other 2 years. So
Right.
it's not something you can kind of do in a vacuum, and that is something we can't control as the finance committee. We can tell you have less money and you have to have less people, I guess.
Got
We
it.
can't tell you that, we can just make that recommendation. But
Yep.
we can't,
We don't
it's way
negotiate.
above our,
Sure.
we're supposed to make recommendations on articles and budgets, not negotiate salary contracts. So
Okay.
that's a deeper dive than we have authority or time to do, I think.
Okay. The other thing that I was looking at was the electricity. So every year, like 23, 24, and 24, 25, we are looking at around 25% hike in the electricity as well. If we look at the 23 approved
Well,
budget
for the
versus
last 3 years, our rate didn't go up, and then it went up this year, because again, we had a 3-year electric contract.
okay.
So I would expect there's a big increase in electricity in all the budgets this year,
Mhm.
because we had a fixed price from our buy agreement for 3 years.
But that hit last year's budget too, didn't it?
No.
I think it may catch the beginning of this year.
Yeah, catches this year,
24.
Yeah.
24, yeah.
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 About halfway through.
Oh, is that what it was?
But
Yeah.
yeah, since it isn't all the way through, it would then mean
Mhm.
that next year's higher. I don't remember, I thought it, well, actually, I don't know. I thought it might have started
think-
July 1st, but I could be wrong.
Right, well, I think the other thing
Think
that
so.
happened is electricity got moved from one place in the budget to another place in the budget. So the electricity became more trackable,
Trackable. Mhm.
more obvious for us to see it.
Got it. And what's contributing to this electricity? Is it like everything that's going on with the town operations, or there are multiple contributors to this electricity section?
All the town buildings and the schools have the electricity for all the school buildings.
Into this particular
And the
line
roads.
item?
Roads,
School-
everything.
The school one is separate. The school one is in the school budget.
That's a school budget, that's
Yeah.
not this electricity
Right,
section.
yeah.
Um,
I agree,
yeah.
I did think it was a higher increase.
Yeah.
After seeing the higher increase already last year.
Right. And yeah, to Andrew's point, I think the only comment I had was like what I particularly was interesting to me, and when I looked at the budgets of other towns, as Shrewsbury or a couple of other towns, and I was like, okay, 78% or 80% of our budget is really coming from property taxes, and if we are gonna increase, I mean, we might drive away some of the households as well if these keep increasing. So I guess I would look for Christie or more recommendations in terms of like how do we get to reduce that dependency on the town, on the property taxes itself, and get more of contribution from the businesses or other areas to lower or at least reduce the the reliance on property taxes, which I thought I couldn't see in the budget itself.
Well, I think there's, if I could,
Go ahead.
there's two answers. One is businesses get charged property taxes as well. So right now, we have a single tax
Level,
rate.
yeah.
You could have a split tax rate, which would mean that the business is paid more. So that's one option. We've traditionally not liked that option. The other is, what can we do to get more revenue
Businesses.
from meals taxes and hotel taxes and, all those other things. And my only point is that I think we understate those to be conservative, and that's how we end up with a lot of free cash. So if we,
I just think you have to be careful with that, in that they also are required to understate them in many cases, because you can't, I believe, there are regulations on what you're allowed to claim as projected revenue. That's my understanding
Right.
from the past.
I think you're right.
how does that get
That
regulated?
there's some penalty if you overguess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So what they present at town meeting, obviously the real tax rate is set up at the fall town meeting, but you can't come to town meeting with some pie in the sky kind of, oh,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna have this
No,
money and
no.
everybody votes for the budgets, and then you find out, no, you don't have
Yeah,
it.
but we're-
And I think that was true in, from my conversations with Leah in the past, but we can certainly explore that with the finance director and the town manager. So everybody can get up to speed on that. But there, and Jane would probably be the right person who would chime in maybe right here, but there certainly are limits to what they're allowed to put in for expected revenue.
There have, if you're interested, there have been in the last year or 2 years, a number of public hearings and select board meetings around this topic.
This topic, yeah,
Yep.
about
You know,
the separate tax rates for,
Yep, split tax
Split
rates.
tax rates, yeah.
You know, one of the things the Stormwater Enterprise Fund does is shift more of the burden of the stormwater from the individual homeowner to the
Commercial.
business owners. You know, another thing is the value of the businesses in town.
right.
Both the number and how they're valued, so, you know, increasing the value of the businesses in town means that, you know, business, you know, a bigger proportion will be paid by the businesses, so
Right.
there's actually more than two things. There's a third too, right? So it's the value of the businesses, which
Yep.
took a hit, especially during COVID.
I think if we can have a little bit of mention of that yes, as a committee, we have been thinking on those lines, and we have been discussing it and reiterating that fact that, you know, it's not just, okay, just increase the taxes. I think we have been discussing all the possible venues, and if those can be presented in the budget itself while we put in our recommendations, I think that could help people understand as well that it's not just like, you know, it's been about raising the taxes. It's also about all the possible venues which we have thought through, like, you know, having the split tax rate, having different, what do we do in terms of the electricity, you know, what are the measures we are taking, some of those aspects.
Okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot that they do, in fact, and by doing the aggregate rate and things like that, they're able to negotiate electricity probably a little better than if they didn't do that. We
Beth
certainly have
Beth
had
has a
those
question.
That has a question.
comments and discussions
Yeah.
in the past, so I don't think it isn't novel or new to bring those up, but the hard part is always, what services do you want less of?
Yeah,
You willing to have 3 less police officers? Are you willing to have, 20 less teachers? Are you willing to, with the way the budgets are structured, there's so much of it is not expense, it's people. And so far, people have come to town meeting and wanted more services.
You're
not
right,
less.
yep.
But go ahead, Beth.
Right. So I think one other thing, since the budget commentary got mentioned, is that we also ought to mention that we are continuing to pay forward for things so that we don't have huge bills in the future. That we've become much more proactive in the last few years
right.
about making sure that we're paying for things that often got pushed off to the future and then were huge bills when they showed up.
Right.
Okay, very good. So I will look to see when the town manager will come, maybe the finance director can come too, and we can have further discussions on that. In the meantime, I guess I would encourage people to go through and try and be specific on which ones you have more interest in exploring, because we're not going to go through 60 of these with the town manager, I don't think. We don't have time
Well,
for
what, I'd be curious, other board members thoughts on keeping the expense line the same as last year, with the exception of things like electricity and things we have no control over.
Well,
I think inflation probably accounts for the vast majority of the increase in expenses, right?
Yeah.
it sort of explains all the increases they're requesting. And, you know, except electricity and the things we can't control for is kind of a catch-all. I mean, what can you control for? I mean, of that $1,000, projected increase right now to the taxpayer, most of it's not in the budget table. Most of it's on things that we either voted on last year or, that are in these capital requests, right? I mean, the budget, taking the salaries aside,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of fat in these expense budgets to go through. I mean,
Well, we could look at each one of them individually, but.
you could.
But I mean, just in general, recognizing there's inflation, there's also opportunities to find different ways of doing things,
Yeah.
oversimplifying, doing more with less, and, we're not gonna cut salaries, so, this is, I think we just need to, push the departments to find ways to manage, and when I looked at, again, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the school budget items, they kept at zero amount this year, they didn't add any expenses, so they found a way to do it, so I don't have it in front of me, but,
Yeah, I don't think that's right.
I think it's a valid question to ask and investigate. Everybody here has been employed and managed budgets, and quite honestly, in the most recent economic turn over the last 24 months, probably been asked to reduce your budget, find ways to make things more efficient, do more with less. Regardless of if these numbers are true, if there is no fat, if this is really just a cost of living adjustment, contractual obligations, things that we can't control for, we should still be investigating it. I don't think it's an unreasonable question to say, why is our tax bill going up by an average of 1,000?
Oh, I'm not saying that's an unreasonable question, but we're well into the creation of this budget. I mean, it's done. I mean, you've got the detail. We had a full day summit on it. Like,
Oh, yeah, and I didn't hear any of these
Yeah,
questions at the summit, which is
yeah,
a good place to ask them.
we started working on next year's budget already. Nobody said like, hey, let's keep it, let's cut the budget, let's keep expenses at zero. Like here,
so
town meeting's coming up. Like, what are we doing? We need to make a recommendation to the town. Or do you really want to go through and have another budget summit and go through each department and hear each department again about why they're
I think it could
increasing
be-
their expense budget by what they are? It's in this book already.
It could be a good exercise going forward. I think it's an important one. I don't think we'll have the time or bandwidth to hit it for town meeting, like Gene's saying, going through line by line,
Which we've done once
which
already.
we've already done once.
when did we go
At
through
the budget
line
summit,
No, we did not.
they
We
go through
line by
department
line.
by department and talk about what
They're-
what their level service is and what they're asking for.
We have the
There's-
opportunity.
And it's in this book.
We have the
And-
opportunity to ask for it there, and
To me, the budget summit is an opportunity for them to explain what they're asking for. It's not an opportunity to go through line by line. We would have been there for 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, this is the process. We're doing the process right now. The process doesn't end until town meeting.
it's ongoing.
Just getting excited.
And even if you don't.
What's that?
Just getting excited, that's all.
That's all right.
I think it's a good sentiment.
So,
Yeah,
It's a good
the
sentiment.
discussion has to start somewhere. Maybe we're better off, better posed for next year to ask these questions earlier.
I
I
think,
think it's unreasonable.
yeah. I think what could also happen is we still have a few folks lined up, like school I mean, I know school has done a good job, but school is lined up and there are a few others who are lined up. If we could just let them know before that, this is what we have been discussing, if you could also talk a little bit about that, if we keep,
Well, if you've watched the school presentation, they do
Yeah.
speak about it. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know how much more you want to hear. We don't get to decide you get to decide a total number with them. You can't decide
specifically.
anything else, so, that's by state law. So the main reason the schools are coming, by the way, is to talk about the capital items that we couldn't cover at the last meeting. We spent an hour plus on their budget at the summit, and we have a whole book. So my expectation is we're not gonna go through the whole huge presentation on the budget with the school superintendent again, that we would be focused on the capital items, that we, want to know what the costs are on the three of them major ones that were not defined. And the other information's been out, for months and months and months.
And you
so-
can watch it on TV.
Yeah, you can go back. But we don't have the meeting time to do all that. That's why we provide information and resources. So it sounds like it'd be valuable to go through the budget table and look for, I would look for you guys to go through it and
Yep.
think of specific ones you want to examine in more detail and learn more. And I will point that every one of these little sections of budget where it says expenses is in a later tab completely broken out down to paper clips versus, oil versus, something. There's 40 accounts that make that up. And so you can see, and then I think that's the useful one. Some of them had to go up. If you're adding a couple more policemen or something like that, then you're going to have some more material, right? If you're adding people, because right now they are. And then some are because of the expected increase in costs. We're living in a time of increased costs, and the town is sort of lagging behind on that change. Unlike when you go to the grocery market or whatever, you notice right away it changes. And I think municipal stuff tends to probably lag, I would guess. But we got the vacuum cleaner. Okay. So let's do a little bit of homework on that, and we'll circle around and we'll talk about it again. It's a good conversation to have, and certainly I think it's our responsibility, as you were saying, to examine these options and convince ourselves one way or the other, or in the end take a vote and majority decides which way we want to do these things.
And as a reminder, like we've talked about the expenses, and we can't cut salary per person, but you can cut people, or we could recommend smaller. So, and I'm not focusing on anybody, but what does too few people in the DPW mean? Where are we pulling them from? What services will we lose? What would one fewer snowplow look like? Like one fewer person to staff it? What would two fewer police officers mean? You can ask the question for each of the departments, and I'm not picking on those departments at all. I'm just sort of saying, what would that mean? So that's a reduction in service. So if something was determined that those people would have to go away, what are we talking about the town walking away from? So I think there are questions that can be asked, and I just don't want to say it's not just in the expense line. So if we're going to ask ourselves tough questions, that has to be one of them as well. Or not, if you don't want to.
Okay. Yes, I will just say that in the case of the budget summit, the people came and talked about why they needed the people they needed. So I don't think they would normally talk about what would happen if we had less, but,
Well, and then,
so that's a big change, and it's it's not an easy question for a department head at a
So-
public meeting, I guess.
I think one of the things we don't have to think about necessarily is it doesn't have to be layoffs. It could just be attrition. It could be failure to fill spots. I'm not talking about advocating that we go
understand.
through and cut things, but
But it's effective, it's effectively having less people to do more work.
Right.
or maybe not always more work, you know? A police officer is out there policing, doing police things, and if we get more calls, then maybe they don't have to be police calls. Like, are we apportioning our calls properly? If DPW doesn't have a person, maybe we're not giving away free trees and staffing up to plant free trees. And again, I'm not choosing these things to target those topics. I'm gonna think about each and every one of these departments. I'm just saying that those are conversations to be had. Can we go with fewer free trees being planted? I think so, but there's a quality of life element that comes out of that, and so,
Well, you wonder if that matters to the overall number of people you're talking about. But or at least I
again,
would wonder,
I'm trying, I think
I understand.
we hire really good people, and I hope we pay them well enough, because they don't tend to turn over very often. So the goal is that they're gonna do the very best with what the town can make for them. And they must realize that $1,000 is a lot to ask the average person in town to pay. $1,000 more, it's not $1,000, it's $1,000 more. Yeah,
Okay, I would like to move on to voting some more articles. We keep moving along here. I think. Let's see, what do I got? Okay, we talked about the restocking of Sandra Pond. Is anybody not ready to vote that article at this point? I think we got the answers people wanted to know about trout. Okay,
You want a
so that's
motion?
now Article 10B.
McMahon, I make a motion to recommend the town vote to transfer $4,500 from free cash for the purpose of restocking Sandra Pond.
Dolan, second.
Is there any discussion from anybody?
This is a classic article where we could say this $4,500 translates to 26 cents, or I don't know what the amount is, on your taxes. Because I think it's actually a very small amount, and, but it's also the lowest hanging fruit in the budget, except maybe the block party, which is even less money. And I almost wonder if there's a point in doing that, just to give people a sense of what they're paying for, or how they're paying for it.
You're welcome to calculate it.
it's about
The-
50 cents.
No,
So $27,000 for the landfill.
$4,500.
So $27,000 for the
$4,500.
landfill is $3.
Divided by 2,000.
So it's 1/6
Yeah.
of that.
Right, except for this is a free cash article, so technically, I mean, you could think of it philosophically, it costs you that much per
Sure.
year, but it doesn't actually, but, yeah.
You could give the free cash back to the taxpayers. That's the way I look at it.
Well, you are by buying fish.
Not me.
Okay, well, anyway, so what do you, I don't see putting in the book next to every article how much that is per penny. I think we
I
we
agree
usually
with you.
give general rules of thumb in the book that this much raises this
$1,000
much.
equals,
Yeah,
right.
that kind of thing. Which obviously
Right.
changes as the average single-family house tax
Increases.
changes and the tax value changes, so it's not exact.
right.
You want to vote?
Well, yes, I don't, I think that would be something we could discuss and putting in the R&R. I don't know that it changes the vote.
Right,
Does that change the vote? No.
no.
Okay, so we will start with Prashant.
So I think, given the kind of intent rather than the amount of impact on the cash, I would say a no on this. Probably we can hold off on this for this particular fiscal year.
Beth?
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, no.
Brand, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, no.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. 1, 2,
Divided
3
by the-
noes.
This end of the room just suddenly got real negative.
8 to 3 to
5,
0.
5,
I was
3,
banking
0.
on Josh.
Sorry,
5
5
3,
3
0.
0. How did we get 11 people all of a sudden?
I gotta sit
Is
here
it
now.
fair to say that the reason would be just looking for places to cut costs? I mean, for the feedback.
The intent, I mean, if the town still chooses to say, okay, we want the restocking,
That's always the intent. I think
exactly.
the bottom line, this is just one of those places we can cut costs without much pain to the town.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask out loud when we talk about pain to the town. Our lowest economic members of the community, do they fish there for the purpose of eating this? Are we, you
no.
know, just thought I'd put it out there.
We don't know.
Nice one, Beth. Yeah.
Like-
In theory, I mean, to me, it's a recreational activity that the town offers at the reservoir for Westborough residents, because only Westborough residents can fish at the reservoir.
Yeah.
Yes, but are Westborough residents counting on that for food,
Yeah.
inadvertently or otherwise, you know?
We don't know. We can't
Westborough
quantify it,
residents
you know.
definitely eat the trout they catch, but I can't tell you that what their socioeconomic status is or something.
It's unlikely, given the time and equipment necessary to catch the fish,
Yeah.
that would be an economical way to get
I
food.
think it's
I would
more
agree
for
with you, yeah.
entertainment,
It's
and you get a nice
possible.
meal once in a
It's
while.
both-
possible,
higher.
It's possible.
but
I don't, I
The-
mean,
you know-
I don't fish, so,
I'm a bad fisherman, but it takes a long time to get a trout there.
it's more likely that it's just for the recreation, a recreation
Okay.
program of the town.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it benefits
But, you know, that's-
and it benefits a large number of people.
It's a good point, though,
Which
Beth,
is-
of is it recreation or
Yeah.
is it sustenance? And I think this one,
I would
It's
say
recreation.
it's recreation more than, say, the food
Right.
pantry. Okay.
But in terms of, I mean, we want to put a statement in about why we voted for it as well.
Right, I think it's a, well.
You got that?
Well, I've got the recreational
Okay,
activity.
all right.
I
All right,
don't know if there's
yep,
any other
just making sure.
points, but it,
You can move on, as long as you got
at
it.
some point I'll summarize them and then people can edit them then. Okay,
wanna
next
do
up
July
would be
4th?
July 4th party.
10C, McMahon, I recommend the Finance Committee, recommend the town, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Recommend the town transfer from free cash $3,500 for the 4th of July committee, for the 4th of July celebration.
Dolan second.
Any discussion? Just having participated as a volunteer at this event, it's an incredibly well-attended event that does capture a lot of people who can't afford to go away every July 4th to what other houses they might own, but people that are in town that week. And I see this as probably our best event of the year in terms of number of people and excitement and fun. So I think they also fundraise on the ilk of, I don't know, 15,000 from civic
Least.
groups
Yep.
and other people in town to pay the bulk of it.
Yep.
And I think this is a good use of funds. Anybody
So,
have other comments? Because rather than comment while you're voting, I'd rather get the comments out of the vote.
So I'm going to support the article, but I do want to make a comment that I think that this should be included in the cost, in the Recreation Department's budget. I don't think it should be a separate article every year. You know, it's a program that they run. You know, it doesn't make sense to me to be separated out like this.
I agree with
Right.
that. I would actually agree with that on the fish too.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't disagree with that, yeah. Won't change anything, I'm just
Yeah.
just to, you know, just a comment.
Right. No, I mean, I think the idea that they had, that they wanted the town to vote on it, was reasonable 2 or 3 times, but we've never turned it down. And so I think it should just be part of the budget.
Any other comments? Not Prashant?
Have you seconded?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dolan, second.
I'm definitely in support of it. Great event.
Yep.
Especially the fact that you've got 15K from donations, fundraising,
Right.
whatnot. Good bang for the buck.
You got 20K, we wouldn't have to vote for it.
That's the other, that's actually where I was going to go next, is I think you could even blast more on that
Yeah.
direct department fundraising.
Yeah.
But that's a different conversation.
Yep. And I agree with the point about the reach as well. Like, you know, you're not just doing this for recreational purposes. You're letting it reach to every person in the town and kind of like a celebration for them as well. So, yep, I would support that as well. So, Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Graham, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so this one is an 800. Miss Clapp not here. Okay, we're gonna skip over Hazardous Waste Day because late breaking news from Beth is that it may not be needed this year.
Yeah.
Or the money might not be needed, I think would be a fairer thing.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to go tuition
Go
remission?
10G to
reimbursement?
tuition reimbursement. which I
McMahon,
think I explained.
make a motion that to recommend the town vote to transfer $49,000 from free cash for the purpose of funding employee tuition reimbursement.
Or second.
Bradley, second.
Any discussion?
So I think the only thing I would say on this is that I was looking at the appropriation and there was only a 11.8% appropriation in the 2023 is what I saw. I'm not sure if it's used enough. That's how I saw the appropriation report that again, Walter, that I forwarded to all of you as well. That's the one I looked at for 2023 appropriations, and I could see that only 11.8% of the money that was expended of the last one was spent out this year. So I'm not quite like 100% sure that it's used enough. I hope it's used enough because it upskills somebody. But yeah, given the austerity or the intent again that I'm talking about, we could possibly reduce it a bit for now, or maybe, revisit it later if they need it. So for that, I would say, yeah, that's the only part I would say.
Yeah, I would think with this it'd be difficult because it would depend when you look at it, because I think people typically, I don't know how they do it in this town, but most companies at least pay you back after you're done with the class, not
Right.
when you're started. So for this fiscal year, that wouldn't necessarily have paid out before December. But I don't know. I'm not that into it. It is a benefit that we are contracted to provide, so if employees do it, we have to pay them. So it's just a question of having the money to do that.
My only feeling is, and I semi-understand the reason for making it a separate article, but I think it should be within the budget, or the budgets for the, I think we've got too many things that are getting pushed to free cash.
I thought you wanted more things pushed to free cash to reduce the
Right.
tax.
I mean, this
I want to
one-
give the taxpayers the free cash back.
The taxpayers get the free cash
No, they
back
don't.
this way. Yeah,
Right.
Not only,
Yeah, this is much
because
better.
if you put it
for
into the
tax-
budget, you'd have to raise and appropriate.
right,
Since you're paying this out of free cash, you're taking what was raised and appropriated and not spent last year and using it to pay this tuition. And if it
Which you may
doesn't,
not
if it
get.
doesn't get reimbursed, it goes back to free cash. So you would actually have to, it would increase the tax rate if you put this in the budget and not free cash.
But I would give that free cash back. Instead of 450,000, I'd make it 500,000 or whatever this thing is.
And then you would
So it's the
raise,
same.
and then the
It's the
tax rate
same.
would raise.
Yeah.
Well, but we're fooling ourselves, I think. The tax rate, if we're spending more money, the tax rate should go up. It's just putting it in free cash, to me, doesn't solve the
Get
issue.
it, okay, yeah. True.
But
Yeah,
the
that's
structure
all.
of the way the tax rate is calculated, putting it in free cash does keep it from being raised year after year when it's not actually fully spent year after year.
Yes, although, I mean, to be fair, generally, she says this would be a raise and appropriate article, so they are taking more out of free cash this year than
No.
normal.
Right.
Because it is a expense, and it's estimated based on what they think they will need. It is, and remember that this money now is for starting July of next year through the following June. It's not for what we're doing now. Okay, well, why don't we vote and see where we end up? I don't think we need more information, do we?
Good.
Okay. So yeah, from my perspective, I think from the intent of reducing the budgets, I would say no to this, or maybe reduce it, come up with a lesser amount in terms
No.
of. No.
So it's a yes or no?
It's a yes or
No.
no.
Yeah.
It's a yes or no, and we hire a town manager to make a suggestion on finding out what she believes we will need for tuition reimbursement based on the information she has, so it doesn't strike me as an arbitrary one where you just decide, well, no, it shouldn't be 49,000, it should be 40, because why would we know more about it
Than she does.
than she does in that particular case? I mean, I don't know. But, anyway, let's vote.
Yeah.
So has Prashant voted?
No.
No, he hasn't
Lumberg,
voted, or
yes.
no, he's voting no?
Yeah, it's a voted no.
He voted no.
No.
Oh, yes,
Beth,
Prasad
you
has
vote.
voted no.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brand, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, no.
Okay, so 7,
6.
6.
2-0.
6-2-0.
Rod, can I ask if your comment is because you think that the money is in the wrong part of the budget?
Yes,
Okay.
which may or may not be an appropriate reason for voting no, but
Can vote
But at least
no
if,
for any
uh,
other reason, other than I am willing to write down comments of why you guys
Although-
voted no.
Although, if that leads to a 25-minute discussion at town meeting, we'll all be shooting daggers at you.
I'll just go
So,
home
yeah, I
for
mean,
25
should I write
minutes.
down, you believe it should be in
yeah,
in budget?
if you want to. Yeah, that's my reason. Like I said, I don't think I can calculate what the tuition rate should be either, or tuition reimbursement.
Okay, and Prashant was wondering if we needed this much. Okay, very good. Town hall security, we voted mobile column lifts with the fire department. Can we go on that one?
Rod, are you satisfied with the engineering type stuff?
You know, I'm going to vote no, so I'm satisfied in that. Well, that's not fair. I believe I am.
The
Should we make a motion
The
before
structural and
discuss?
type.
You want a motion first?
Well, I was
the
just sort
discussion-
of curious as to whether we were gonna vote it.
Well, I suppose, yeah. Like, I guess this
Because
is
I
the
don't wanna make
conversation. Should we
motions.
vote now?
Are
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
ready to vote?
Yes,
But your question was.
that, which is really what his
Yeah,
question
your,
was.
your question was, so, from what I've been able to see there, I found one one sticker online on the column thing that showed a picture, and it said if the if it was a 4-inch slab and 3,500-pound concrete, it should be able to support it. So based on that,
So it's structurally okay.
seems to be.
I go with the theory that the square area of the jack that's going to be on the floor is pretty
Bigger than the
close
wheels.
to the size of the contact area of the wheel
Yep.
or wheels it's picking up. So it shouldn't be very different than that. It's not like it's just one little point. It's got pads up front. pads
Don't forget
in
to add the
back.
weight of the jack itself, though.
So
Okay.
the concrete
Anyway.
thickness concern has been addressed.
I'm thinking it's okay.
Do you want a
But-
motion?
Yes, now let's do a motion.
All right, McMahon, motion to recommend the town vote to transfer $96,530 from free cash for the purpose of purchasing mobile column lifts for the fire department.
Did you say 96530?
96,530,
Okay, good.
I think that's what I said.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
Second, anybody?
Bradley, second.
Second.
We have Andrew. Any further discussion?
This is a conversation from the capital committee, and we did talk about this a little bit. The police chief emphasized more in that meeting than he did, that I saw at
Fire
the town
chief?
hall. Excuse me, fire chief. Emphasized more in that meeting about the impact on safety for people. He talked about the number of times that this would have made a difference, especially for activities that were happening on the highway, because we do cover highway time, and there's some very large, some very large vehicles. So safety is a, well, actually, that may be, you may be talking about something different, actually.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
different,
that was for the different ramps.
that was a
I'm sorry.
different gadget they
I
had.
was gonna say,
Yes.
that's cool.
No, you're right. I
This is
apologize.
purely
Okay.
maintenance in the shed, in
Right.
the fire.
Rewind. I think that
Leverage more
this
of the
conversation was
skills.
about how it was also potentially usable for other groups as well. So
Correct.
yes, fire department, yes, in that group, other people would be able, other departments could conceivably use this as well. He wasn't sure how, but if the conversation is, can the town benefit from that, and we have the resources on hand, yes, it is potentially leverageable beyond just the fire department. So in that regard, sorry.
Not to
So
go
many
down a
conversations,
rabbit hole
but-
too far, but does the DPW have similar equipment?
Yeah, right.
They don't, no, but they were the other group that was talked about around this topic. So-
Right, because you could clearly lift a truck. if you
It
could
it
lift
comes
a
down to
fire
concerns
truck.
about the space so it's
Yeah.
about space in the
Oh, height.
building, in that building, but it's portable, so again, conceivably it could. I think if we have it too, the town can also have the expertise for people like the fire department does, that can service our vehicles in a way that saves money, that we don't have to pay for vehicles elsewhere. Again, it becomes an extensively leverageable tool beyond just the fire department, which is one of the key selling points for this, as far as I remember. But then again, I also said it was the police chief, and I also said it was a totally different program, so. Wake up,
enough.
boo.
Hey, that's okay. It's a long night.
Thank you.
I mean, I think we're leveraging some of our town employees who are certified diesel mechanics, and if it makes them doing their sort of extra work more efficient, that seems like a plus.
So my only comment is, I think it's a good idea, but not this year. I'd say come back again next year and I realize this is free cash, but there is no, free cash is not really free, so spending more money in a year that taxes are going up, I think we should consider.
Well, one of the questions I have that would counter that is, without the lift, how much extra does it cost us to do the work on these vehicles? Is there payback by having a tool that works better?
Essentially, how long is it gonna take us to recoup the investment?
And if memory serves, it was like 3.5 years or something like that. There was a price attached to it. I remember at the time of the discussion, I didn't know that really satisfied an exact number. It was a number, it was an honest number, but I didn't know that it satisfied the number because there are things we are not doing now because we don't have the lift. There are other groups that are not using it now because we don't have the lift. And the reality is that 3.5 year payback or whatever that was didn't account for the fact that we would probably use it more if we did. Other groups would use it more if we did. So the payback in my mind was even quicker than what they were able to say for for some of the work that they were, that they called out.
Mm.
So, but 3.5 years comes to my mind as a number that I remember being floated for this.
Yeah, I don't remember the
Do you
chief
think that-
talking about that, but I do remember he talked about taking the trucks out of service for a very long time if they needed to go for extensive servicing,
Yeah, that's true.
because
I
we didn't
remember
have the
that
list.
from the
It
town hall
was
too.
from the,
yeah.
that's what I'm talking
Or
about,
from
from
the
the town
budget
hall,
summit, yeah.
from the budget summit. So,
And,
that's,
and the other question I would ask is, what's the considered longevity of these lifts? Because I would expect that they're fairly, will last a long time.
They're capital. so
20
it's gotta be
years,
At least
yeah.
yeah.
Right, so if we're paying them back in 3.5 years and they're gonna last 20 years, this seems like it's, penny wise, pound foolish not to purchase them now.
Yeah, I think the other part is also that if you postpone this for this year, then that means that next year or whenever you come back, you have to spend some extra grants to, pay for it, because the cost of that item will increase as well, for sure. Every year it does happen. So I don't think that was also something that was considered, that, okay, if we don't buy this year and we buy a couple of years down the line or two, next year, will it be the same cost? Will it reduce? Nothing will reduce. How much
3
will it
years
increase?
payback, though, does seem a little sus. That means we'd be doing over $30,000 in external diesel
Maintenance?
maintenance a year. I don't remember seeing that anywhere at that much. I mean, you could be right, I'm just,
And I could be wrong too. I mean, but there was a
Looking at that
returnable value. I mean,
DPW budget for fixing things, they go through 30K pretty
They sure do.
quick.
But I think.
But a lot of that's parts.
Yeah.
but it's, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
You have to
So I'm
realize,
not
Right.
sure you're saving that, or.
Right,
you definitely
right.
out 30,000
Yeah.
on extra outside labor, I guess.
That, yeah, that's what I'm
the
saying.
labor
That seems like it would be,
Shocked me
hard. Yeah.
that working on a $1 million ladder truck
Yeah,
and, these
Yeah, the labor rate's probably pretty high.
$600,000
Yeah.
pumper trucks or whatever isn't cheap.
And
Anyway.
Rod's idea about pushing it off another year is not a bad one. I mean, given what we're talking about here, it is a totally legit. I mean, not that you need my enablement of your suggestion. I would say
Only if
that
you're
I
gonna
saw
vote
that.
no.
No, but I see a value in how we can start leveraging this. The sooner the better. More savings, more use, more other groups are going to be able to start leveraging it. I think I see a value proposition to the town that makes me say yes to this in a way that fish don't.
Fair enough. Let's vote.
Ahuja, yes.
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Grant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, no.
Okay, so that would be 7-1.
7-1-0.
Perfect, okay. Next up is ambulance. If my explanation was sufficient, we can vote. If you'd rather hear more, we can wait.
So, how much is in the ambulance account now?
I'm not sure I got that number. That's a good point. All right, so let me try and find that number. I don't know. We kind of believed it at the
Yeah,
moment, it's
That's-
what.
I think it's
what-
about
that we're
308,
using it
yeah.
up.
They're using it up.
Yeah.
But that next year, with
He's
this
requested
year's
more.
receipts, there'll be more.
but it'll come from free cash. I mean,
It'll
I'm
come
sorry,
from
it'll
the
come from ambulance receipts,
actual
which would
ambulance
close
receipts.
out to free cash, so.
Oops. If you want, I can get that number, or,
If everybody else is happy, I'm happy.
okay.
All right. McMahon, I motion to recommend the town transfer $308,498 from free cash and, I'm sorry, from ambulance receipts and $123,000 from free cash for the purpose of purchasing an ambulance.
I think the free cash is.
No,
It's
I
the
think
other-
you had that
Oh, I got it, I'm
backwards.
sorry, you're right, I had it backwards. I had it right the first time.
308,
All right,
498.
recommend the town vote to transfer $308,498 from free cash and $123,000 from ambulance receipts for the purpose of purchasing an ambulance.
Bradley, second.
Very good.
So I guess, I'd just be curious, without looking at the numbers, the expected revenue from for the fire department was $1.6 million, and we got $2 million. So I'd just be curious how we decide, how the chief makes that decision. Why doesn't he take all $400,000? Or is he thinking he only needs $100,000 a year to, I'd be interested in that discussion later unless I don't.
Yeah, but there's two things that happened. One, the cost of the ambulances went up, and two, the lead time is lengthened,
Yep,
so he's ordering a second one earlier than he thought.
yeah.
So he hadn't been putting enough aside because he had to order the second one
So
sooner than he thought it
Yeah.
would. That's why there's not enough. So
Yeah.
those two reasons
but
are why there's not
I'm
enough.
wondering for this year, if he had $400,000 in extra revenue, did we put all 400,000?
I don't think so. I think he asked for more.
Because he won't be.
Because he won't have to pay for
he-
another pumper truck.
Well, yeah, he won't be ordering another ambulance for
Or-
a couple of years because
Okay.
unless the lead time gets even longer. But
Yeah,
Presumably
Andrew
he'll
might know
be
'cause he's
caught
on
up
the
some.
capital, but when is the next, I mean, this would be a hard stretch for you to remember, but
Yeah,
is the next ambulance, 3 years from now after we've done these two, or is it yearly, or is it every other?
The answer, let me look at the schedule. I don't have it downloaded here, but I will take that as a note to follow up.
This doesn't affect the vote, I was just
No.
curious.
It's interesting.
I mean, they're talking about the ambulance being 11 years old.
3 years.
So if an
Every
ambulance
3 years, so
averages,
it should be a third.
right.
No, we're
I
not
mean, if an
disputing the replacement of this ambulance. He was discussing when the next one
Is due.
might. be
Well,
due.
right, but if you have to have 4, and they have a life expectancy of 10 years, then every 2.5 years, you should be putting one on the budget. And you can't quite do it that way, so every 2 to 3 years, we should see one.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
That's his word. That's his line.
We should get a bumper
Yeah.
sticker.
Let's vote. Keep moving.
Where's the bong?
It's almost March, it's almost March 23rd.
Ahuja, yes.
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes?
Brand, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
All right, that one is 800. Very good. On to the next page. I think we still want to learn a little bit more about the administrative vehicles and the trucks.
Did we skip police?
And DPW stuff.
Beth, we did not skip police. We voted on it.
We already voted.
Previous,
Yeah, a while
Okay.
ago. You seconded it.
9-0.
no, I'm working
You voted
offline
for it
and I
already.
don't have my comment.
She's changing her mind.
Sorry, I'm working online and I don't have comments on the online version.
You voted for it on February 5th.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Okay, schools we're skipping over, library repair we're skipping over, water supply, oh. So there's a new one called, it's from the IT department, it's called Fire Department Core Switches. It's basically the IT switches for Ethernet travel, I'm guessing, at the fire department though. And that is a brand new spanking article that they got put in there. So the question is, my question for you, do you want to hear from the IT people on this? It's $19,500, it's a free cash article. It's to upgrade the core switches at Westborough Fire Department. They'll be 10 years old in FY 2025 and are not supported.
May I ask what number that is? What?
It's
13.
Article 13 on the new
13,
warrant.
okay.
19,500.
It didn't
Got
used
it.
to exist.
Seems like we should hear from somebody. I mean, maybe Christie could.
I think this might have been in the appropriation and got moved out. This can't, did this come up in the select board meeting? Because this is lower than, I think the comment was made, this is even lower than typically the threshold's around 25,000 for capital stuff.
Yeah, so why is it? Well, it's not in the capital article.
Oh.
It's just
Just an
the article.
Okay.
That's the other thing, I don't know if people noticed, but I had brought this up at the at the budget meeting was why certain things were in the so-called capital list and other things, like say the library was outside the capital things, but the school like thing that was $5 million was in there or whatever. And I think she wanted to recognize all the things that go through the capital committee now. So put all the items that, and it made sense to separate borrows from so-called free cash articles, because if you were to, it's unlikely people would vote the big things in a block anyway, because they're all obviously going to get talked about or questioned, right? But it is possible that with the free cash ones, maybe there's out of the list of 10, only 3 that are questioned or something, and the other 7 can get voted as a block. But anyway, she tried that, and I guess it's an experiment to see if people like that better. I don't think it matters hugely either way, but it seemed a little more consistent to me, because there was an inconsistency on why, like, some DPW capital that did go through your committee still showed up like later on as a separate article versus in the
Yeah, I guess I
altogether.
haven't tracked that myself, but
Yeah.
it's a good question.
Yeah. Okay, so people want more information? Should I reach out to Mark? Actually, I think I gave up the IT department. I think that might be Mr. Dolan.
Happy to reach out.
Is that you?
I think if you could just come back, we don't necessarily need to have.
I'll do it, 'cause I don't care.
At least ask him about it. We've done our due diligence.
Liaison assignment. Let's see who IT is. Bradley. IT.
IT is Bradley?
Oh, you know what? That's one I picked up this year. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
because I dropped
I
you.
apologize.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Andrew, so ask him about the switches.
I'm
Yeah.
great at saying not my job.
Mark Stockman, be your guy. Okay, Article 14, Historical Commission funding. I guess that's gone in at the dollar amount. Now it's in the warrant with the dollar amount. I didn't update my sheet, I don't think.
Do you want a,
Yeah, we had a
A motion?
presentation on that.
Well, let's see. I was originally thinking we couldn't vote their stuff yet because it didn't have a dollar, but it
It does.
It does.
Yes, so I guess we could do that. This is 24,300.
McMahon, make a motion to recommend the town vote to transfer $24,300 from free cash for the purpose of surveying town properties for historical and archaeological value.
Bradley, second?
Okay. Discussion.
I think this was a presentation that happened, and a couple of points that were brought about were that this grant is not like it's happening this year. This grant will be coming up in the upcoming years as well. And also, Jane, I think, had a very good point about if we have to go, why go with half the appropriation, and get 50%, go with the full appropriation, go for the grant with the full appropriation, full amount, rather than going by piecemeals. So in that sense, I think it all makes sense. However, given this year and the kind of intent that we are trying to show with what should and what should not, what can be saved, I think, I feel this is something which we could save upon.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I question the absolute value in some of those reports. I have looked at the one for our house. It has pretty much Zippo for useful information or accuracy. It was done a long time ago. But given how few demolition permits come up, it just seemed to me that you're jumping from not we're not doing any of these almost, to, we want to do, it's like 80 or something right away. And I just think it'd be some value to demonstrating the usefulness of doing it. And that's why I would think, if you vote $10,000 worth, they can do some, pick through them, learn the process, get the people, and report back to us next year on, what did we get out of it? What's, was it valuable? Is it useful? Versus, it just seemed like we're doing nothing and we're gonna, just jump in the pond to this large amount. And I feel they deserve some support to be able to to perform their function, but this seemed a little haphazard of there's about 80 and we paid $310 for one of them. But would you really expect, if you hired somebody to do 80 of them, to spend that same amount on each one? I think it would be less, because I think once you get into certain records, it's going to be somewhat less work. And I just didn't, I don't, and I didn't see an immediate, incredible, I support their other thought of giving them more time to make their decisions. But I don't know that you need to have all this ready ahead of time, because how many building, they actually cited almost.
Yeah, zero this year,
Zero
and one the year before.
Yeah.
So,
And the big news, I guess, is because of the golf clubhouse. Maybe that's why it's gotten attention.
Spur House.
But
Yeah.
no,
Another
the
Spur
Spur
House.
House was another one.
Yeah.
But why today it's getting more attention,
Yeah.
because there's people concerned about that. What does other people think?
I kind of felt the same way as you. I didn't really see a big benefit to the town. And maybe I got this wrong, but it seemed like they had over 500 properties that they think met this, and most of them have had this research done on them. And I don't see the benefit. There's some benefit, I guess, but it seems like whatever they were going to learn by doing some, and the next year they could learn from the 500 or so that are already done. I don't know. I don't see a big value to this until it's needed, but
Yeah, I get, yeah.
yeah, I'm with you with a much smaller amount. I would go 3,000, presuming we do about 10 of them a year, and plan to do this over a much longer period of time. To the purpose of the value to the town, we are a historical town. We do have part of what people come here for is for that historical, and the work of volunteers to preserve that as an integral part of what we do as a community, I can look upon and respect and appreciate. But I'm not really $24,000 or even $40,000, for the next wave, or whatever the next amount. I think that there's a way to do this in a measured way, over a longer time. I don't know how you will ever demonstrate value for this, except this adds to our knowledge of what is one of the things that makes this a special town. So in that regard, I understand a small way of supporting this. So, my 2 cents. 3,000.
You check your house
I,
yesterday?
Have I checked my house?
I'd like to know if there's a minimum
There's a good
amount the
thought.
town needs to support this in order to successfully get funding from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. That's the sort of, if we need to put up 3,000, that's how much I'd like to put up. If we need to show a commitment of 10,000, I'd kind of like to hit that magic sweet spot to say, yeah, we're interested, but we don't need to do it all at once.
I guess my understanding is that the grant is not a guarantee. It's an application, and it's post hoc, so it's after you've spent the money. So I see that having, in my mind, a stable commitment of 3,000, even if we don't get any money back for that, is still cheaper to us if we pay 10,000 and every 3 years we do this, we get half of the money back for grants.
Right.
To me, that we're still end up over time having a more measured, smaller. Again, my 2 cents.
Right. I'd go with 5,000 a year.
That's not an option.
No, exactly. We're not haggling over the number here.
No, I know, I'm literally,
Well, I mean, we can make a recommendation at a,
Nope.
at a lower
Yeah, I think we
amount.
can't. John, are you still with us? Because I have a question.
Yeah,
Okay, so on something like this, obviously we could vote, let's hypothetically say we vote on the motion that exists and
Full
vote it down. Can we make a recommendation or vote in favor of, say, the
I've
3,000
lost
or
track of which article
5,000?
you on. Let me pull up the warrant. Which article are you talking about?
This,
14
Article 14,
in version 3.
On
Page
version
12.
3?
Yes.
Page 12, version 3.
page 12 of version 3, yeah.
Okay. So this says, or other such amount, so you can make a recommendation for any amount you want.
Right, but on town meeting floor, they will make a motion of that. It's a question of whether someone else makes a motion at the lower, amendment at a lower amount or something, probably.
Yeah, that would change, because it says or such other amount, an amendment lower or higher would be allowable.
Yeah.
The amendment would have to get voted on. Actually, because we have a bylaw that says if the only difference in two motions is money, we don't really have to go through the amendment. We would just start at the higher and work our way down to the lower until the motion carried. So for instance, if the finance committee wanted to recommend $10,000, somebody on the finance committee could make a motion to amend the amount to transfer from free cash to $10,000. Deliberation could ensue, and when it came time for a vote, we would start by taking a vote for $24,300. If that succeeded, we'd stop and that would be done. And if that failed, we'd then take an action, vote on the $10,000 amount and then see if that succeeded or failed.
Okay. And in the R&R, would we in this circumstance normally have a vote for the amount and then a second vote? Like we voted, let's say, 7-2-1 to defeat the article, and we voted, 6-2-1 in favor of $4,000 or something like that? Or would we just have one thing more normally?
You could decide to do whatever you want. You could.
Okay, it's our book, I guess.
Yeah, but I think the key is
Yeah,
also
yeah.
we are capturing notes now, which is an important
Yeah.
part of what our recommendation is.
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
sure I want to be so prescriptive about the exact number, but I think unless it's talked about.
I'm in favor of supporting something, I think what you're suggesting, where if we voted to recommend against the funding, that part of the comment would be that, the committee thinks that, starting with a smaller dollar amount,
Over multiple years.
potentially over multiple years would be a better way to do it, rather than try to,
So rather than us.
rather
even
than say, well,
recommending
we're gonna offer an amendment, and if we do offer the amendment, this is the vote on it,
Right, yeah.
And if somebody wants to make an amendment on the floor, they can, whether it's,
So are we more comfortable with that as a group? We vote, we'll vote, I would suspect the motion would be to defeat this, and then we record in our notes, we believe, a smaller amount without actually voting, or creating,
Yeah.
unless someone here wants to.
That sounds
put
reasonable.
a stake in the ground.
I think we should vote that the concept is fine. I think we need a positive vote as well.
So at the moment,
The
we have,
negative
the
vote-
motion is for the positive, and we have to vote that first, unless we want to
I
withdraw.
don't know
the
that
motion.
we've had a,
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, we did.
okay,
have
oh,
a
so you
motion.
made a motion
Yep.
and it was seconded?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I would not.
Okay,
vote
well, we're gonna have to
as-
vote.
As written, but quite honestly, I think 3,000 or 5,000 is even too much. If we're gonna spread it out over years, if we only did one of these in the last 2 years, it's $310. The town,
Well, I think they would like to start doing more of them.
and that's
It's
okay,
different
but-
than they were required to do one or
But the
two.
likelihood of that reaping benefits in any near term is
Not
extremely
huge,
low.
yeah.
So we have the ability to spread it out over 5+ years, 10 years. I would probably look at 1,500, maybe 1,000.
And I'd say that they also weren't sure how much this would cost, and the conversation, it's a fair conversation to ask somebody, look, if we schedule this out multiple years. So there's an entire conversation about costing this that still needs to happen in a more substantive way. Without us even putting in numbers to the estimates to the numbers necessarily about the quantities. So I think I'm still liking the idea of we pulling it back. They can still try and figure out what it'd be, and as part of their research, figure out how much does this look like over a longer term? Like, are there
Can I
efficiencies at
ask,
scale?
who's the liaison to the Historical Commission?
We probably don't have one.
Hank.
Let me tell you.
Also, sorry to play EV geek, but Joshua, could you please move your microphone down lower? It's of all the people there, it's very hard to understand you because the mic's aiming away from you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Is that better?
Not really. Is that you?
better?
So historical says as needed.
Not really.
Yeah, it's an as needed.
Maybe that mic isn't working.
That's why
Is there
I
another one you
contacted
grabbed?
them.
that is
Invited
Hank.
them.
That does look like Hank.
Is this better?
Okay.
That's a little better.
So-
Still not great.
Take this one.
How about now?
Oh, that's much better.
Much better.
Look at that
It's like
baritone
radio
right there.
quiet.
Is in the house.
Okay, so, do you want to withdraw your motion, or do you want to just vote this and then we'll vote another one?
Let's vote her down.
Let's vote it.
I vote.
Go.
Okay. Ahuja, no.
Blumberg, no.
Bradley, no?
Brant, no.
Dolan, no.
Leslie, no?
McMahon, no.
Shafford, no.
All
Okay,
right.
so that did not pass, so that failed.
McMahon,
So we
I
need
make a
to
motion
defeat, I think.
to recommend the town vote against,
Vote to defeat the article.
vote to defeat the article, currently
Yeah.
number
As
14,
written.
as written.
Dolan, second.
Okay, so this is to defeat, fine.
So I just had a question on
Yeah.
this. Now that we defeated this, I mean, not that
We
we
haven't.
defeated,
We haven't
we have
defeated it.
We haven't
recommended.
done anything.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
a
We
motion
haven't done.
doesn't carry, it means nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So could this information go back to the historical commission and they come back with a revised article?
No,
Not necessarily.
they can,
They can.
They can until it closes.
Yeah.
But
but they probably won't.
Okay.
I mean, I think it would be a nice
Well-
courtesy for me to write to them and say,
I was gonna
we
suggest
voted
that.
against, our recommendation is not to support the article, and the group would like to see a much reduced number over
Right.
several years, is our recommendation.
Right.
And,
And if-
but it's up to them,
Yeah,
it's
of
their
course. Yeah,
article,
He
and
seemed amenable when we brought it up, though, right?
I don't think. they're
But then he wrote the
completely-
article as written.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Okay, anyway,
so we got to vote, now we've got to vote to
defeat.
defeat.
Okay.
and we can
But are we
revote it at
voting-
town meeting if they get up and say, we would like to, we make the motion to spend $5,000 or whatever number they make up at the time on town meeting floor, we can vote that number and report it. If we know ahead of time that that's what they're gonna do, we could vote ahead of time, but we won't. We probably won't.
I would definitely like that somebody contact whoever qualifies as the historical commission to give them the opportunity to come back with a proposal that's less
Yeah.
before we have to close it or print it.
Yes, I will mention it to them, but I don't even know if they have a meeting between now and then, but sure.
Okay.
You have something to say,
It's not
Dolan?
our job to massage their thing, it's, if they want to do that, they can.
Yeah.
Vote.
No,
So
Let's vote.
sorry. Let's vote. Okay. So vote to defeat? Yes.
Correct.
So you vote yes if you want to defeat it.
Yes.
Pat?
Was that your vote? Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
All right, so that is 8-0-0 to defeat.
Yes, Prashant voted yes to say.
And I will
Needs to say
contact
no.
them and let them know where we're at. Okay. All right, how about this, roadway acceptance, Ed Waters Way? That's the one that wasn't controversial? That we covered at the meeting. It's Article 20 right now.
McMahon, I move to recommend the town vote to accept Ed Waters Way as a public way.
A second?
Bradley, second.
Any discussion? This one seemed like it wasn't controversial as to being ready, and seems like it's the right time. All right, Prashant.
Ahuja, yes.
Lomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
That's 8. Okay, so that one's done. All right, there are some more in here.
May I ask the chair how much longer we're going to be, because it's already been about an hour and a half, and
Okay. I think there was only one more. We're obviously not voting the other ones. Yeah, so I think that's probably about it. Oh, the only other thing is, did we skip their one on the Historical Society bylaw? Because I think we could vote that too and give them feedback.
yeah.
Yeah.
Remember what number that is?
What
28.
number did it wind up?
28.
We didn't vote on that?
28, demolition and build, yeah, we didn't vote that one. And they didn't, at the select board meeting, change the dates, they just left it as was.
Oh, that's
And
what
just
it was.
changed it to 30 days. We were kind of wondering
Yep.
whether they would do that, but they didn't even mention that in the presentation part that I saw. So I think we're okay with voting it as it's in the warrant, as written in the warrant would be sufficient.
McMahon, I move to recommend the town amend the general bylaws as written in the article.
Like, how about calling out Article 64?
I'm sorry, Article 64.
Yes, that's-
Bradley, second.
Okay, so that's McMahon and Bradley. So as of right now, it just changes to the 15 days to 30 is the only change. Any further discussion? And Andrew, you seconded?
Yeah, I did,
Yes.
yes.
Sorry, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, especially as a volunteer board, I think 30 days is a reasonable number for this kind of choice.
Yep.
Let's vote.
Ahuja, yes.
Lomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Yes, okay, she's a blank. Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
That is 800. Okay, so that's it. So that's it for that kind of voting for tonight. I want to quickly go over what we have coming up on our calendar. So you get a heads up of it, all the exciting things still to come besides budgets. No meeting Monday night, it's a holiday, it's President's Day, so we will not be meeting Monday night. We will be meeting Thursday night here. We have the Library Building Committee coming. I'm expecting on or about Monday or so to be able to send out a package of information from them, including the presentation and back, some of the estimates and stuff like that, so you can go ahead, go through that ahead of their visit. We're going to have the chair and vice chair of the committee attending our meeting and maybe some others to go through that presentation. On the following Monday, the 26th, and that following Thursday, we're going to be across the street at Forbes. And on the 26th, DPW, Chris Payant's coming, and Christie will be coming either that Monday or Thursday, I believe, following Thursday. On March 4th, the Monday, we're going to meet here in joint session with the Select Board we're going to cover all the citizen petitions. And the plan right now is to go through them sequentially. There's at least going to be 12 of them, because there are 12 handed in right now. Whatever one, the warrant will be closed by then, so we'd know. The thought is to give the proponent about 3 minutes to state a case for it, and then leave some time for questions or discussion. We will vote them individually at our own meeting, not try and do roll call votes, because we're hybrid with 2 boards at that meeting. So our actual voting on them we'll do the following meeting or a later meeting. But that it does allow at least some ability of the proponent to describe why they think it's important to pass, but I'm trying to keep, with 12 of them to do, we only have so much time in a 2-hour meeting to really cover all these. And I think they're mostly pretty self-explanatory in the warrant, so I don't see a need for a huge presentation on those. And so then on the 7th, that Thursday, we have the schools here. Amber will be coming. She will have the numbers in hand by that time, she said. She wasn't able to come on the 11th, so that's where that is. And then I have spoken to the planning board and Jen Gingras, and they're either coming on the 11th, which I don't think worked for Mark's, so they may be coming later, closer to town meeting, in which case we may not, we can decide if we want to vote before or after we hear from them. Jenny and Mark did present to the select board last night, so you're welcome to find that on the select board video, and see whether you need more or less information. And you were going to get a hold of her for
I
Andrew's questions?
emailed Jennifer. I haven't heard back from her.
Okay.
I can call her again tomorrow morning.
Well, we're not meeting Monday, so
Yeah,
the
next week.
earliest we would need to digest it is next Thursday. So, and those were some questions. And other than that, I think I have to go through the warrant one more time, because there are a couple, I think, little things, like, there's something, there's in there was a report, a request for money for doing a report for open space and recreation. I don't think we covered at the summit.
No.
And
No, I think it's a new
I think
one.
it's new.
And-
okay,
And there's no figure, no dollar
and
attached.
so and there wasn't a dollar attached yet, so I'm trying to figure out who would speak to that. And then who knows what other articles we'll have between now and then. Okay, so that's the plan. Next thing up, so we can go home, would be to approve the minutes of February 8th.
I actually have one more
oh.
thing, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, I don't mind.
So the golf club committee,
right.
which we voted for me to participate in, has now merged with the municipal building committee. Evidently because there weren't enough people interested in having a separate committee, and there may be some logic to having people who deal with municipal buildings involved. So anyway, we had our first meeting this morning. We can expect an article for a feasibility study to develop some program and preliminary documents, budget, et cetera, for the golf club. So there'll be an article in this.
In
So
this
there will
town
be
meeting.
some article,
Yeah.
so we probably have to hear, well, we can at least hear from you. Yeah, my understanding is the municipal building committee was down 2 people already, and then they didn't, despite the huge interest in being on the golf club reuse committee, there was just, maybe everybody realized how much work it is to be on these building committees, or the lack of thanks you'll ever get for doing it. Anyway, so Christie reached out to Rod and asked him, and I'm very happy that Rod agreed to represent us on the Municipal Building Committee. I think they'll do a fantastic job. And they will not only look at the golf club, but they're going to be looking at the build-out of the community center, which is the other big job for the Municipal Building Committee now. So, as Rod said, I think there's some good sense there, because what each space is sort of doing, you kind of want to make sense of, and not do them in a vacuum, and having two separate committees, particularly with the difficulty in volunteers, it makes a lot of sense. So appreciate you doing that. And so you think, I mean, it's not enough to do I mean, are we talking about like a full design, or are we talking about just getting some?
The discussion was feasibility study versus feasibility study and schematic design.
Yeah.
And we pulled back to just the feasibility study,
Okay.
because I think there's enough interest in town that we'll probably at least peripherally explore the idea of keeping what we have, even though probably not going to go that route. We should at least understand what the cost differences are and the benefits.
Yeah, and with so little time left before town meeting, it seems like it'd be hard to have a real number for any kind of useful schematic design, I think. But yeah, it would make sense to do that in the fall town meeting, even though people hate waiting. But that's part of the problem. Okay.
Walter, do we know who's, who, I don't think there's a liaison to the Robinson Walk Around Trust, but do we know how to reach out to them?
Walk Up Robinson?
Walk Up Robinson, there you go.
Question for money worth, or
So
for just talking to them?
the connection here is that that committee is responsible for providing money for the free space, for purchase of free space.
Yeah.
In an informal conversation I had with somebody who is a representative on the board, who didn't know the answers to the question, which is why I want to take it to the right people and keep it all official. I guess the question arises, if they're responsible for helping, or if they have a mission to support this town by supporting our open spaces, one of the areas that we're moving towards is paying for money to upkeep our open spaces.
Sure.
And I wonder if there is an intersection there. It's not buying the open spaces, but it's certainly paying to support the open spaces, and I don't know how that fits in the purview or the mission of the trust.
Okay, I'll find out.
That'd be awesome.
Who the person to contact would be, or I'll find out who they are. I'm sure
Thank
I
you.
can just ask them,
Yeah.
Seal or something.
Do you understand what I'm talking about for the money, though?
Yes,
I don't
yes.
wanna,
Yes,
I don't
so
wanna
in
blame
the
it on the
past,
police
it
chief
was
again.
all mostly about acquisition of property,
Yeah.
and maybe something where they put in a parking lot so you could use it. But you're saying is, I don't know whether their trust guidelines would allow maintenance of a property to be coming out of the
and in fact,
funds or not.
it's one of the questions I have for the property is that one of the areas we've not looked at as we've gotten all this free property is the cost of maintaining that free
Sure.
property. And conservation, under Derek, did do a lot of work to try and level set that. And so I think it's an expectation to ask of any property we're getting what the sustainable costs are. And then, by extension, hopefully if the Robinson.
We had a pretty good discussion at the budget summit on that exact topic, because they're starting to look for money for doing it, and you know, yeah, where does that go? All they kept saying is, yeah, but it's gonna get bigger or something, and anyway.
Mhm.
But it right now it's done by a lot of volunteer hours, and I think there's still a potential for doing a lot of it that way. It's just,
Sure,
It's
but
a
there
mix.
is still some
and
capital
there's
is the wrong
still
word.
like, you need money for doing some
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, now, how about approval of minutes from February 8th?
McMahon, I make motion to accept the minutes from February 8th.
Bradley, second.
Okay, any discussion, complaints? I went through them enough to see that the votes were correct. Actually, I don't know we did that, it's voting on that night anyway.
Nope.
We didn't. Okay. But they look great to me, other than that. Let's vote.
Ahuja, yes.
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so those are approved. I think we need to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Bradley, second.
Ahuja, yes.
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Westborough TV, and good night.
It's like Josh showed.